Welcome to the ACSA Campus Tour, where every Tuesday we take you to another part of the state, talk with a district administrator about the successes and challenges they are having in their school community as we move through this COVID-19 pandemic. Joining us today is the principal from the Sycamore Magnet Academy and the Tustin Unified School District, Rafael Placencia. Rafael, thanks so much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Naj.
So school is underway in your district, at your school. Tell me about the successes and challenges for you and your staff leading up to the beginning of the school year and now since school has begun.
Well, the challenges, as you know, they came back in March. So we've had a lot to learn and chew on from then. But one of the benefits that we've had here at Tustin, being a middle school principal or a K-8 now, is that our district is actually very progressive with technology and curriculum and instructions. They're pretty much ahead of the game. We are very well set with the technology devices and access. There was a measure that was passed back in 2012. It was a $135 million bond. And it's a 30-year bond, and it refreshes every 4 to 5 years. So when we closed, and we went into distance learning in March, we were pretty equipped to embrace and really absorb the challenge that we were in. The challenge became, how do you integrate the curriculum and instruction with only distance learning? So we learned from that experience. So during the summer, we put a lot of time in preparing for the opening of the school year. And we have a very strong, cohesive team here in Tustin, all the way from Ed Services, IT, our business department, administrative services, and our school sites and our teachers. That happens to be one of our strengths here. And I'm very blessed and fortunate that we have that. Moving forward, there was a lot of planning and collaborating, and our district reached out to our community, to our teachers, to the stakeholders, and they did a lot of listening. They actually put a lot of surveys out there to find out what it is that we need to do better and what they see as their concerns. So as we start pivoting to the start of the school year, we are still in a distance learning mode. So at that time, we were able to conduct surveys, hear from the parents, from the teachers, and from the students. And I'm in a unique situation because I was able to close out a middle school, and we closed out an elementary, and now I'm actually bringing two schools together as one. We have a Magnet Academy that is a K-8. So the challenges are a little unique from most folks, but at the same time, we feel that we are still dealing with similar challenges, which is the distance learning, the platforms that we use to communicate, the curriculum that we're using. And after learning from that previous experience, our teams mobilized, and they heard how a lot of people were communicating and providing resources through different venues. One of the things that I'm really proud of is that we have one single platform now, which is K-8, to be able to communicate and access for the students and our teachers. So that is our platform. And then we also have our curriculum. We're using the distance learning curriculum through Florida Virtual, which actually now coincides with the distance learning mode. So we're very fortunate in that regard. So I think we're getting that right. We have Schoology as the single communication platform, and we have Florida Virtual that goes hand in hand with Schoology for the distance learning. So as far as those challenges go, as anything else, we have the online that we have to deal with, the capacity, the communication of everybody, how to get everybody on board. So those challenges are very similar in most districts, but in our districts, I think we're absorbing a little bit better, and I'm very proud of it. And as far as my staff is concerned, they are now pivoting to learning a new tool.
Well, let me ask you about the communication aspect, because you mentioned that a couple of times, and the pivot that you guys have had there in the district and on your school campus as well. Tell me about the strategy to stay connected with your teachers, your students, your staff, your school community before the start of the school year and then after. And have you had to pivot from one to the other, especially since school has begun?
That's a very good point you just raised, because before we used to do the emails, and then we used to use Aries to communicate, whereas now all of that is available within Schoology to be able to communicate. We still are using Aries, but we are now using different platforms or different resources available to us. For example, as a site, I was used to just using Aries to communicate to everybody. That was my messaging, or through emails. Whereas now we're using other social medias to be able to reach out to our community. We do use surveys to still listen to what they're saying and listen to what the needs are, and then being able to communicate back some of the things that we've learned. We are now using our weekly newsletter, for example. We're using a S'more as a way to communicate, and in that communication, we are able to put all the links, all the resources, videos, how to for our parents and our students, how to access and learn the new platform. So all that is available to them, whereas before it was piecemealed. Now it's in one location, and the communication piece is really enhanced through Schoology and also through the other social media points.
No, that's great. That's great. So let me have you bring out your crystal ball and let me have you think towards Labor Day. Do you think by Labor Day you'll have the opportunity to see and assess the successes and challenges from these first few weeks of school, and then pivot? We've talked about pivoting already. Pivot to better serve your students for the rest of the fall?
You know, everything is changing by the day and sometimes by the minute, and we need to be equipped for that. And again, that's why you have plans in place, or better yet, the infrastructure and the systems to be able to address whatever comes your way. There is no one way to address everything. But I think we are equipped to deal with different measures. And in terms of the successes, there's so much that we need to look at. Instead of the state testing that we used to have to measure success, we need to look at the small little victories that we have. Connecting with their students. How are we connecting, and are they engaged? That in itself is a victory and a success that you can measure. Now you have to then move forward with the rigor of the curriculum. Are we really not only not opening the gap, but closing the gap, the learning gap for our students? And I think those are the measures that we can use. But before we do any of that, our first measure that we're going to be using is the social emotional learning. We need to connect with our kids, building the culture, and then hopefully then build those relationships to then move on to the rigor and measure of all those academic performances.
Rafael Placencia is the principal from Sycamore Magnet Academy and the Tustin Unified School District. Rafael, good to see you. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Naj.
And thank you, folks, so much for joining us here on the ACSA Campus Tour. Remember, every week we take you to another part of the state, talk with a district administrator about the successes and challenges they are experiencing in their school community. That comes your way on Tuesdays here on the ACSA Campus Tour.